we're seeing that our clients are more open and receptive to at least looking at new technology to meet their needs. And we just want to be a part of the conversation.
Today on LawNext, my guest is Haresh Bhungalia, CEO of Casepoint, an e-discovery company that you might say has bucked the industry trend a little bit by growing without outside investment. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the entrepreneurs and innovators who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, on to this week's interview. So, Haresh Bhungalia, welcome to LawNext.
Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate being here.
It's good to talk to you, and funny because I don't think we've ever met before. I don't recall that we've ever physically met before. So it's good to get a chance to talk to you and chat with you a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity.
So, of course, we're going to talk about Casepoint, but you have an interesting background, and I wonder if we could kind of start with your backstory and tell us, if you could tell us a little bit about your career and how you got into business in the first place.
Yeah, I think, entrepreneurship is something that was ingrained in me early on. My dad was an entrepreneur. I grew up around entrepreneurs, and I graduated college, worked for a few years at Arthur Andersen and a few other companies, and saw an opportunity to start a services business, which then kind of evolved into a public sector business focused on predominantly the federal government. And my business partner and I grew that to 650 individuals. And then we had an exit in 2012. Parallel to that, what is now Casepoint was incubating, and I needed somewhere to kind of, park myself, and obviously, being part of a growth story at the previous company, it's kind of addictive, and I wanted to be a part of another growth story, and I joined Casepoint as a CEO and have been since 2012, and here we are 7 years later and still having a lot of fun.
So I have to say, I was reading an article about you and preparing for today's podcast, and there was a great story in it, if true, that one of your first entrepreneurial endeavors was loading up a truck with mattresses and reselling them.
Yes, it was. I was in high school at the time, and I saw there was a mattress manufacturer where we lived. I grew up outside of Detroit. And we'd have family and friends come in from Chicago, and they were hauling these things back and forth. And I thought, well, why not just take the mattresses to them? And I filled up a U-Haul, and we drove out to Chicago and sold them and came back. And it was a great experience. And that was my first lesson in gross margin, I guess, if you want to call it that.
It tells you something about where you were headed anyway, I guess. In that first company, the company that you founded, it was called the 2020 Company, and that was a company that primarily served the federal government. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, we started that in 2001, so that was right on the heels of Y2K, and that's when there was a great need for technical services in the private sector and the public sector, and we focused predominantly on the federal space. And we were able to build out a organization kind of focused on civilian agencies, mainly Department of Education, Health and Human Services, that type of thing.
And after you had the exit there, how did you get connected with Casepoint?
So actually, I was connected with Casepoint prior to that. Casepoint started in 2007. Where Vipul Rajapra and Vishal Rajapra, two brothers, were in the process of kind of, addressing the e-discovery challenge that existed at that time. And what we saw was there was a fragmented market in how the e-discovery workflow was being executed. And we thought there was a better way to apply a technology solution to, essentially drive efficiency. And we believed in Vishal and Vipul and Paresh, my business partner from 2020, and I came in initially with some seed financing as well as management expertise, and we grew the business from there. So while we were running 2020, we were providing kind of some of our time to what was called at Legal Den. And so that kind of grew, 5 years on its own before I joined more or less full time in my current capacity.
So you were an advisor and an investor, and then you came aboard as CEO in 2012.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So when you talk about how the market was fragmented then, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's much less fragmented now in a lot of ways. But where did you see the opportunity for Casepoint? Where did you see an opening for you to do something different than what some of the other vendors on the market were doing at that point?
I think at that point, we were kind of one of the first cloud providers. I don't believe that cloud architecture in kind of meeting the e-discovery need was around at that point in time. And also, if you look back then, I mean, this was kind of on the, I guess you could call it the tail end of Ringtail maybe, and Relativity was just kind of coming onto the market with their review platform. But then we also saw that, organizations were using a different tool to do processing, and then a different tool to do analytics, and then a different tool to do the review, and sometimes even a different tool to do some production management, and so on and so forth. And we felt that there was a way to architect a piece of technology that encapsulated all of those steps into, a single cohesive, executable workflow, essentially.
So more of an end-to-end approach to the
Yeah,
discovery project.
which we hear more about these days than we did back then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is sometimes funny from where I sit that you hear companies often use the same language to talk about what they do, and yet they do in fact take different approaches to these solutions and to develop these solutions, and even into the markets that they serve. So that was the company has been around now for more than 10 years. You've been with it for almost 7 years. So what has that trajectory been like for Casepoint since you've come aboard?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, I think that, up until, the first 5 years, I mean, the business was still run on kind of the core philosophies that we operate it today. It was always a kind of focused on, obviously, the company, the technology, but also maintaining a long-term vision, making sure that we were sustainable for growth, focused on growth. But I think that, after I joined full time, we were able to build out a national sales team. We were able to build out a national client support model. We were able to revamp the technology, and kind of actually we released a new piece of technology earlier this year, which is kind of being rolled out as we speak. And we also, through that process, have seen significant growth. When I started, I think we were maybe about 30 or 40 individuals. Today, we're approximately 400. And it's great, again, just to be a part of a growth story.
So in that new technology you just referred to, is that the platform, the Casepoint platform?
It is the platform. That's exactly right.
So what is that? Talk about what that is.
So I think, the platform really is built on an open architecture. So in terms of being able to integrate other pieces of functionality that are ancillary to the e-discovery, again, I keep using the word workflow, but I don't know what else to call it.
Sure.
Let's call it matter management, case management, litigation hold, project management, and maybe even some financial analysis. So the premise there is that just like we saw kind of the e-discovery market being fragmented, we're now seeing that the broader legal tech market is fragmented, and there's an opportunity to be able to have a cohesive, piece of software that can encapsulate more and more of the functionality that's needed to deliver a holistic legal technology, essentially.
So the idea of a platform then is that you're able to bring in functions or aspects of the workflow that are maybe a little bit more ancillary to the sort of the primary e-discovery workflow. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's exactly right. So basically, imagine that we have built the platform, and on that platform, we can build other pieces of functionality very quickly. If you look at the core components of any software package, data management, security, et cetera, that's all reusable if you've built it that way, and that's how we've built the platform. And now on that platform, the e-discovery component is the first pillar that we've built, so call it. And then now we can build other pieces around it. And in fact, down the road, we could conceivably build functionality around Freedom of Information Act needs or mergers and acquisitions, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I wanted to just go back for a second to the kind of the trajectory after you came aboard, because I'm curious. When you came into the company, you came without having worked directly in the legal industry, and I'm always curious whether you found that to be how you found that transition, how you found the adaptability of the skills you had developed in your first company into the legal industry and the e-discovery industry.
That's a very interesting question. And I think a part of kind of my excitement and enthusiasm being a part of Casepoint is exactly that, was that I wanted to be able to, prove to myself that, I could transition my experience from one industry to another. And I think that when I looked at kind of the legal space and understanding how the dynamics of that domain work, I was very fortunate to be able to surround myself with some very smart people, not only my business partners, but other senior management that we had at the company. And I think that, just kind of being a part of, I guess, the process, I was able to observe a lot. I was able to digest a lot. And obviously, you talk to a lot of folks and so on and so forth. But the biggest thing that I was able to bring over from my prior experience was kind of the management lessons that I had learned in terms of, building out teams and processes and metric-driven organizations and focusing on the outcomes and, all of those management things. I think they apply irrespective of the industry that you're in, as so long as you've got individuals to augment the technical deficiencies that you may have, which I certainly had. But again, being surrounded by individuals that did have that knowledge and experience, I was able to get up to speed relatively quickly.
So what's been the growth curve like for the company? I mean, has it been a steady growth year over year, or has it accelerated as we've gone forward? In other words, have the last couple of years been seen more accelerated growth than you'd seen prior to that?
Yeah, no, the last couple of years have definitely seen greater growth than kind of, there was a middle period there where it was, we were still growing, but it had slowed down a little bit. But to give you some context, Casepoint is 6 times, well, how about this? Our revenue has grown 6 times since I've joined. So if you look at what the revenue that we had in 2012 versus the revenue that we'll have in 2019, our revenue this year will be 6 times what it was the year that I joined.
Okay, and how does that? What about in terms of customer installations and customer use? Your customer base. How's
Yeah,
that
so I
developing?
think we're looking at it not only we don't look at it in terms of numbers of customers, we're looking at kind of revenue per customer.
Right.
Our goal really is to have as you know, we would prefer to have fewer customers where we do a higher volume of business with than have, you know, a larger customer base where we're doing a fewer dollars. And so when you look at our customer base from a numbers perspective, it's grown significantly, but I think that the growth really is in the revenue per customer.
And who are those customers? I noticed, obviously, I'm sure you're serving law firms and corporate legal departments as others do. I also noticed on your website, it looks like you're doing a lot of work for government clients as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, on the AmLaw, 100, 150 is certainly a customer base of ours. Corporations we work with in hospitality, construction, healthcare, finance, and then public sector is a core focus area of ours as well. When you look at that market, they have the same e-discovery needs that the private sector has. And, obviously I know that space from my prior background. And
Right.
we actually hired a vice president to run that business unit for us. She started a couple of years ago. And, we're starting to see some great momentum serving that customer base.
Does that spill over into? I mean, you mentioned earlier FOIA. I mean, is that something that also comes up with that customer base with the federal
It
government? Or
is. Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
is. It is. Yeah,
yeah.
records management, FOIA. There's a whole bunch of other components that are data related that certainly come up in our conversations that we're having with our government customers.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, let's continue this week's interview. So this has clearly been a period in the legal technology market in which venture capital has become more available. We've seen some major investments in e-discovery companies. We've seen some e-discovery companies, some major acquisitions of e-discovery companies. You've not gone that route, and I'm assuming that's by design, not by lack of opportunity. So how is it that you've decided, and why is it that you've kind of developed as you have without pursuing venture funding?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things. I think that a part of it was that when you're on this growth trajectory, I think we wanted to maintain a certain amount of nimbleness. And not that a financial partner would not allow us to be nimble, but I think we wanted to be able to make decisions quickly and be able to kind of, execute the business. And, we focused on growth, but we also equally focused on being capital efficient and making sure that we're building a sustainable business model. And as we look ahead, I mean, look, it would be foolish for us not to have boardroom conversations around the broader market and funding, and obviously, the growth equity market has been reaching out, and we've talked about it, but up until now, we haven't had a need to take on a financial partner because we haven't had kind of a cliff in terms of, a point where we would run out of funding or availability of cash. I think our goal really was to build a business based on solid foundations with the hope and aspiration that funding would be available if and when we needed it based on the fundamentals of the business.
So what does that say about what the future course of the business might be? I mean, it is, people always talk about their exit strategies. You had an exit in your prior business. Is that something that you're working towards, that you're thinking about?
I mean, I think that we think about it. I don't know that we are working towards it or it's a process that we've commenced yet. I think that we're more excited right now about realizing the potential of this Casepoint platform that we're rolling out. I think that when we look ahead, we see a great deal of potential in terms of kind of getting that technology to where it needs to be and being able to see it come to fruition. And I think that at the moment, we'd rather focus our efforts executing the business rather than going through a funding cycle, because funding cycles are time consuming and they're necessary at the appropriate time, but they're time consuming. And I think we're just going to focus on the business for the near term.
Yeah. You're obviously long past the startup stage for this business, and you've been through the startup phase before. But if you were advising a younger company, either in this space or in the legal technology field more broadly, would you have any advice for them about this issue of when to consider funding and what questions to ask about whether that's the right choice for them or not?
Yeah, I think that, look, in this current environment, funding is available for the right type of business, and in some instances, even just the right idea. And I think that it's important that we measure funding not sheerly in the dollars or the check size or the analytics behind, how all of that comes together. I think the most important question to ask is, do you see yourself working with this financial partner, essentially? Because they are going to have a vested interest in your business, and you are all kind of on a common goal here. And it's important that they share the long-term strategic vision that you've laid out for the business, or maybe they even help you formulate that strategic vision, but it's important that there be some sort of, agreement on what that's going to look like. I think the other thing is, are they going to be incremental to the tactical execution of the business? Meaning, are they going to really help you put the pieces in place so that you can achieve the long-term success that you're looking for? And I think lastly, you ask yourself, do you see yourself kind of inviting this person or these individuals into your boardroom? And I think it's more about picking the right partner, because as I mentioned, in this current environment, funding's available for the right company. I think it's just figuring out who's going to be a fit for you.
And there is just overall that control issue, right? I mean, you if you have a vision for your company, and I'm saying you collectively, you who are there now, have a vision for where you want to go. You have to I assume, have to be willing to give up on some of that vision, or amend some of that vision, or make sure you've got just the right partner who's going to be consistent with that vision. That must be a tough thing to do.
I mean, it is a tough thing to do, but I think that if you've got conviction on where you believe your business can go, and if you are able to articulate it correctly, and look, sometimes you have to be open to the universe, and you may learn something along the way as you're conversing with folks that honestly may be smarter than you, which includes myself. And then you have to be flexible to have that vision shift a little bit based off of the current information that's available to you. So sometimes it is an iterative process, but at the same time, you do have to have thought through where you want to go, and you should have some sort of conviction around that, so that way then you're able to surround yourself with the right types of individuals.
So how is Casepoint, and how have Casepoint's customers benefited from kind of that lack of venture capital, from the fact that you've been able to grow organically without that capital?
I mean, I think that the main thing has been that we've been able to focus on executing the business. I think that when you look at it, we are not, myself included, I'm able to focus on spending more time with our customers. I'm able to focus my time more with, our client services team or our sales and marketing team, because quite honestly, I'm not worried about, preparing for a board meeting.
Yeah.
Even though we have informal conversations among the current equity owners, I'm not worried about more of a formal reporting structure. And the other thing is that, there is this luxury of being able to make autonomous decisions on, whether it be pricing strategy or whether it be kind of, okay, where do we want to invest for growth, that type of thing. And so I think that our customers benefit from just my personal ability to be more responsive.
Harish, what's the market look like to you right now? I mean, I'm always cognizant of the fact that there still is in the e-discovery market, one company that seems by all accounts to be the dominant player in the market. And so how do you stand out in that environment? How do you compete in that environment? How do you grow in that environment?
Yeah, I think that if you look at kind of any technology trend over a period of time, there are obviously some companies that have been able to sustain over a very, very long period of time. But I think if you look at most industries, there's technology that kind of comes and then it fades out type of thing. We've seen it with previous e-discovery technologies that have come in, whether it be, I guess to say when I first started, Ringtail was out there in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah.
And today it's the company Relativity is out there. I think that, when we look at the market today, we're seeing that our customers are open to a new way of doing things. They're open to a new technology that's delivered in a different way, let's say, whether it be cloud or integrated or whatnot. And so we're seeing that our clients are more open and receptive to at least looking at new technology to meet their needs. And we just want to be a part of the conversation. And I think that if given an opportunity to be a part of the conversation, when they learn more about Casepoint and how we offer our software and kind of how we deliver it, we've obviously been able to have some success. And we're optimistic that we will be able to continue on the current growth trajectory.
And where exactly where do you see that the opportunities for that growth to continue? I mean, over the last year, you've invested in your core platform and in upgrading that platform. You've also introduced, as we were talking earlier, the Casepoint platform. Where are the new customers for your company? Where is the growth going to happen for you?
Yeah, I think that the growth is going to happen in the three customer sets that we mentioned. I think that when we look at the public sector, they have a kind of a legacy technology set that they're using today, and they are looking at upgrading that technology. So we're pretty optimistic about where that's going to go. I think that when we look at corporate legal, e-discovery is more and more becoming a part of the conversation in terms of strategic planning and budgeting and things along those lines. And we're starting to get in on some of those conversations early on. And so we're expecting to see some expansion in our corporate customer base. And when we look at kind of the law firm community, we are seeing that, law firms that have had e-discovery in-house are now taking a revisit at their technology stack and how they're delivering it, and seeing if there's a better way to kind of provide, more efficient litigation support to their clients, whether it be a AmLaw 10 or AmLaw 100 or AmLaw 150. The other thing that we're also seeing is that firms that don't have the internal infrastructure, they're realizing that in order to be competitive in terms of being able to provide, efficient litigation support, they do need to bring to bear a robust e-discovery platform. And so as a part of that, we're able to engage with our customers and then share our value proposition and some of our use cases, which we've been able to drive to some success.
And what about geographically? Are you where are your customers mostly now, and do you see opportunities for expanding geographically?
Yeah, so most of our customers today are national, U.S. in nature. We really haven't expanded internationally yet. We have looked at some opportunities in, Canada or the EU, and we've done some stuff here and there. We do have a client in South America, but honestly, at the moment, North America, the U.S. market is the largest e-discovery market. There's plenty of market share still to be picked up here, and we're focusing our efforts on North America at the moment.
Rush, we are just about out of time, but I wanted to give you the final word. Is there anything else you'd like to say or add before we wrap up today?
No, Bob, I think this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think we talked about a number of things from, kind of where I started and how I got into e-discovery and kind of my time at Casepoint and where we're going and all of that. And I really enjoyed it. And again, thank you very much, and looking forward to staying in touch.
I look forward to it. You're going to be at ILTA. I'll see you at ILTA if you're going to be there.
Yes, I am going to be at ILTA, and it'd be great to connect then as well. Fantastic.
We'll see you there. So, well, thanks a lot. We've been talking with Haresh Bhungalia, CEO of Casepoint. Before we wrap up, I want to just mention a thanks to our sponsor of today's episode, MyCase. With thousands of customers, a trusted practice management solution helping lawyers across the country run organized, efficient, and successful law firms. Try it free today at mycase.com. A big thanks again to Haresh for taking the time to be with us today. And of course, as always, thanks to Bob Ambrogi for producing and editing the show. That's it for this week. This is Bob Ambrogi.